2026 starts now, Real Talk from Front Office Leaders. I am going to pass it over to Doug Holtzman, who is hosting this wonderful session today. He is the Senior Vice President of Sports here at Sportsdigita. So take it away, Doug.
Thanks, Amanda. First of all, welcome to everybody. Hope you had a nice Thanksgiving. It, it's so right after Thanksgiving, we always start talking, wrapping up 2025, which we're all doing right now, and starting 2026. And what we're going to do today is we're gonna talk about some important things going on in sports sales right now, right? But we've got two people with me that are grinding it out and doing it the right way. So what I want to do is introduce each of you, each of them to you, right, and them go over the role first. So David Lawrence.
Thanks, Doug. David Lawrence, General Manager, Vice President of Business Development with the newly named Wilson Warbirds here in Wilson, North Carolina.
And Steve?
Thanks, Doug. Steve Given. I'm the Executive Director of Business Development with the Hartford Yard Goats here in Connecticut.
Awesome. And for the listeners, by the way, if you have any questions throughout, submit them. And at any point during the webinar, and we're going to do our best at the end to cover all of those. And also at the end, everybody who's on here today, we're going to send out the recording. So you all have that as well. So let's dive right in. First thing I want to talk about are the biggest challenges facing today's teams. So David, why don't you kick us off? What are some of the biggest challenges facing your team?
Yeah, as I mentioned, new team. We're when we moved over from sunsetting the Carolina Mudcats into into a new team, we made the conscious decision that we treat it a little bit more like a startup than just a change of a logo and location. And so, when you do that, you go into it as eyes wide open. And so, when you're thinking, okay, new name, new brand, new location, not having a stadium that is finished, you're using renderings versus photos and pictures and pieces to show that's tangible. So basically, creating everything from scratch is again just specific to us is a challenge. But I think being able to get into the community, even though it's only about 20 miles away from where we were, being able to get in and ask questions, share kind of what the new opportunities are going to be, come at it with a philosophy of, hey, we don't want to be cookie cutter. We want to kind of start new. And we want to ask questions and understand kind of what the goals and objectives are for the businesses in our area and community. But that kind of starting from scratch. So you're utilizing some existing relationships, but you're also kind of treating it as new. So you're almost taking that as a challenge and turning it into an opportunity, right? You're taking that and saying, hey, here's an opportunity to get to know more about your business and what are your goals and objectives, whether they're a new client or somebody that we may have had a relationship with in the past.
Very interesting. And for those you don't know, I mean, they literally moved. It was like 20 miles away. But
yeah,
it not only is it wasn't the same team, it was actually a different team name. So they have to reinvent everything, which is hard and expensive, but it's hard to do.
Yeah.
Steve, how about you?
So, Doug, we're going into year 9 of actual play here at Duncan Park. With COVID down here in the middle there, so it's over 10 years of being here in downtown Hartford, and we're trying to stay top of mind for corporate support for entertainment purposes among minor league hockey in the state, minor league soccer. We've got professional WNBA and just not too far away down at Mohegan Sun. We've got Yukon Athletics, and then an hour and a half, 2 hours away are the bigger markets in Boston and in New York. So it's trying to stay relevant in front of mind after 9 years of being here. So it's constantly trying to reinvent ourselves year over year to figure out what's the big splash going to be this year?
That's interesting. And I could tell you from working with our 600 plus clients on the sports side, the number one thing I'm seeing is that it's all about hitting sales numbers. But what's happening is that sometimes they're talking, and we'll talk about this more later, that the salespeople are sometimes just selling to sell and not necessarily selling to help, right? And that's a challenge to change mindsets.
Yeah.
Again, we're going to go over this as we go into these different questions. So let's talk about with your teams, what's working right now and why. David, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, alluded to it a little bit, but with a new approach, and we had this kind of mindset for the last couple of years, but being able to flip the switch and saying, okay, any preconceived notions from partners, you're kind of starting brand new, and that process, what we're finding is really working is truly not just saying it, but getting out and treating it as not just not just a sale, and not just trying to say, hey, we've got an outfield wall sign, we've got a promotion, we've got a video feature, whatever the assets are, but treating it as a business solution. We're understanding and asking, as a team, what are the goals and objectives, and then coming back with a business solution for for these organizations and companies, and being able to then put together pieces that achieve those goals and objectives for each specific not a cookie cutter. Every every DIGIDECK that we put together to share with clients or prospects is different, and it's all based on just listening and learning, and then coming back and being able to say, hey, here's a solution, and we're finding that we're getting a lot of very positive responses, and it's the responses to the presentation. This is not typical of what maybe someone says they would see from a minor league or organization similar. They're seeing it as a holistic approach to solving a business kind of objective, and they're willing to put some budget and money behind it, for not just those one-off pieces.
For sure. And it's interesting, David, that you said that. It's almost like people are starting to do more today than yesterday and I always butcher this word, consultative selling, right? Is listening to the pain points and solving them.
Yeah.
Right. And it's you've heard me say this a million times, right? What's my goal is for you to hit your goals.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
But and that's what it's all about. Steve, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%, Doug. Our goal is to, when we're talking with our current partners or prospective partners, is to learn more about them, what separates them from others that are in the market, what they're trying to get out of a potential partnership with us, how they'd consider it a success, and then figure out the right assets that might work to make all that happen. So we're going into year 9, as I mentioned. So we have partners that have been with us all 9 years. So it's continuing to make sure that we're creating the right fit for them, whether it's the same assets they've had since 2017, or if they've switched over the course of those seasons. And then it's still prospecting and working with new partners to create activations for them at the ballpark, or create new inventory at the ballpark if there's nothing that really fits what they're trying to do. So those are that's what's working now, and we've continued to increase our sponsorship year over year, because that sponsorship goal always goes up year over year. So and that's, we're very proud of that, and still a lot of work to be done, but it's shaping up already to be a very good 2026.
Love it. And I don't know why goals always go up, so David and I used to just under promise as much as possible back in the day, right there. So just back in the day a little bit. So no, let's talk a little negative, right? what's not working anymore, and what have you moved on from? So, David, why don't you go first?
Yeah, and again, not to sound like a broken record, but what we found that maybe had worked in the past, and maybe this was not even the right approach to begin with, and maybe that's part of the reason is there was this mindset of as we all know, especially in minor league baseball or in any type of organization, you're wearing many hats. You're always wearing you're operational focused one day or part of a day, and you're obviously revenue generating as the focus is for everybody. But when you think of that, you're putting a plan together with someone, and what we found that sometimes folks had fallen into was that the ending was the signature on the agreement, and what is not working is if that's the mindset, it's really that's when it begins. It's the beginning, and it's not just, hey, we put this together. Let's hope it works well, and we'll come back at the end of the year and we'll do a typical recap, and we'll say, hopefully everything went well. You told us what made would make this a success, and this is what it shows, and let's talk about next year. And I think that's not kind of the philosophy that we're taking. We're taking more of that ongoing consultative approach. So there's that constant calibration. So, it's not waiting until the end of the season to say, hey, here's your recap. It's that constant, each homestand, each month as we go along, what's working, what's not working, and making sure that we're having those conversations, and understanding in real time what's being seen as positive and negative. And if we need to double down on some pieces, we're not waiting till the end to say, oh, well, it's too late now. And so that's something that we found just isn't working as an approach. We're trying to be much better in that kind of constant consultative, regular calibration.
And DL, I'm going to give the old Ben Sutton reference here of touch points, right? So more and more of them now than ever before. And it's so important. You can't just sell today and we'll talk to you next year. You've got to have those constant touch points throughout the year. Steve, how about you?
So what we've gone away from, or I guess what we've realized over the last few years, is that we want to be something different than what people are used to. So if they're used to commercials on social media or commercials on video boards at stadiums, we want to be something different. We want to be able to tell our story and create some fun content for our fans to interact with in game, or if they're if they're on their screens on a non-yard goats game. So especially for social media, we're looking at ways to create things that tie in with that the sponsor messaging, but also our own content. So it's not, it's maybe like urgent questions from the players, and urgent answers from the players, and tie that into a sponsor rather than just play that sponsor's commercial. So we have limited content and limited availability to work with, right? So we want to make the most of it and make sure that it reaches that sponsor messaging and sponsor touch points too.
For sure. I'm looking around at some of these attendees. So, and David, there's a more than one, right? That came from the college world.
Yeah.
And I see the legend Drew King on here as well. So just know he's listening, David. But explain some of the differences, right? For back when we all sold multimedia rights in college to today's landscape, because it's much different.
Yeah, it is, and I think while it is different, that approach that you alluded to, whether it be, way back in the day, the Greg Bennett training that that the Learfield IMG folks, used, or a variety of different, you can name, a ton. It's that it's that understanding of what the client is trying to accomplish. It's listening, and then providing those solutions. It's really, it's that, but it's also, like you said, as things are changing, you're having to understand, okay, is it more of an analytical numbers ROI? I mean, ROI is always important. How much of that versus some of the emotional pieces that come into it, but it's all back to just understanding the client, and what are the goals at hand, and making sure then you can take that information. And then I think it's a lot of times, we've seen folks that will ask those questions and have been trained well to do that, but then it's, how do you connect those dots? How do you actually take what they're telling you and then use your own inventory, your own creativity, your own experiences, and make that a connection, so it becomes that overused term, but a true win-win.
Mhm. That's so true, right? And so valid. But it's the biggest thing I think too is knowing that sales and sponsorships is changing every day, right? It's social media is changing every day, right? Of people's wants
Right.
and needs. So being able to adapt, right,
Yeah.
and lead for that. So at the beginning of my career, it took me a while to understand storytelling, right? Not just like, hey, I'm fibbing, right, and talking to you, but actually storytelling when that moves the needle with partners and with fans. And I want to get into that a little bit. So, Steve, why don't we start with you on that one of what you see from a storytelling angle with you and your team?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I talked with I brought this up to you before. One of my favorite things I've heard, and it's what we strive for, is I was meeting with a law firm not too long ago, and we were at the park, and one of the attorneys said, I went to 8 games last year, and I remember about 10 minutes of baseball, but I had a blast. And that's what we're trying to do, right? Because we can't control the players that are on the field, like what happens. Obviously, we hope they have a walk-off win every single game, right? But it's not always in the cards. But we want everyone to have a good time, regardless of that score, regardless of what happens on the field. And that's one of the things that we really preach, is that it is fun, it's entertainment, and there just happens to be baseball being played in the background. So one of the items I always lead off calls or meetings with is, have you been out to a game yourself over the last few years? What brought you out? Who were you with? Where did you sit? What did you feel? And that's, those good moments that they had are what we're going to try and build for their brand, to integrate into our experience, or to build for their staff or their clients to come out and have those fun memories too.
For sure. David, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, and Steve nailed it. I mean, our approach is, we're approaching it. We're not, in our case, we're not selling a baseball game. And as silly as that may sound, we're selling a fan experience. We're selling an event. So, from the minute they get to the parking lot, get to the ticket booth, find their seat, have an usher, show them where they're sitting, make sure everything is clean, make sure that their experience in their food and beverage, concession lines, if they're in a premium area, whatever that may be, that their experience is first class, from the beginning. So we want that to be, first and foremost. But again, as part of that, it's you're coming to an event. You're being able to say, in our case, well, thankfully with the pitch clocks now 2 hours and 45 minutes, not 4 hours of time, but you're taking that time. You can leave some of your, what's going on in your life away, but you're not just necessarily coming to a game. You're coming to an event to spend time with friends and family. You're there to have a beer and a hot dog or a soda or ice cream, or just spend time socializing with, friends and family, for 2.5, 3 hours of time. And that experience, everything that's part of it should be, again, first class experience, because that's the event. And again, Steve hit it. People will walk out and they tell us all the time, I came to X number of games. I can't remember who won or lost. I just remember that we had a blast, and this was going on the field, and it was, this band was playing as we were coming up, or this was happening, on the concourse. That's what people remember, and so that's part of the story, that it's an event, not just really a baseball game.
For sure. I always laugh with how many people tell me when they know I've been associated with baseball, right? Is, hey, I remember when what such and such player or coach or manager threw me a ball. I mean, let's be honest, the ball costs nothing, right?
Yeah.
But that person is, and it could be a grown man or a grown woman that are talking about this years later. That you go into their house and there's a ball on the mantle, and you're like, "What's that?" They're like, "Oh, this guy threw me a ball and remembered it." That's crazy, right? And that's the magic of sports. When I get into storytelling, I always tell people, right, that you need to be able to tell a story that works not only during your meeting and your conversation with the prospect or the partner, but afterwards when you aren't there, right? How are you able to get to that person when they move on with your story and are able to tell it to others, whether they're getting decisions or evaluations or whatever it is? And that's so important. And then I got to put David on got to tell a funny story about David, but what happened, but not too bad, not too bad. So about stories, right? So 2 years ago, it was at the Fall Business Summit in Charlotte. David, you came up to me, and we might have had a few cocktails, or maybe, right? But and he
Maybe.
looked at me and he said, "Doug, I think it's time, right?" And I said, "What? It's time for us to bring you all on, but I need to know, are you going to be able to help us tell our story, right, to our fans and our advertisers, so not only myself but our team could hit our goals." And and it happened, right?
Yep.
And we brought you on. And then just last month, or a month and a half ago, in October, we're in Indianapolis together. Again, might have had a few cocktails in, but you said to me, but this is in a group, and it had nothing to do, right? It was you and your boss and a few others from your team. And you said, "Hey, Doug, I just want to let you know, like, not only were we able to tell our story, we knocked it out of the park with our fans, and we hit our goals." And like I said,
Yeah.
how cool is that, right? That story, because again, you had to tell a different story than Steve, because again, you moved. You had a new team name. Everybody didn't know your name. It was no longer the old team. Now it's the Warbirds. You had to explain what that was. You were able to do that, and how cool that is, right? A great of experience. Before I have a few other questions, just to the audience, if there's any other questions, please submit it. We'll cover it all. We'll have fun doing so. Let's get into, at the end of the day, right? Competition. So, Steve, how do you sell against the competition in a crowded market? So what's setting you all apart?
Thankfully, over 9 years, we've been at or near the top of our league in attendance. This last year we were at 96% capacity over the games. That was with a very wet spring and a pretty stifling summer here in Connecticut. So hopefully, we're up over 100% capacity again in 2026. But it's we want to be known as the best, right? So we won Minor League Baseball Organization of the Year in 2024. Super proud of that. and we want to keep winning awards. We won another one this past year in Indianapolis for driving diversity. So, it's on our to-do list of what we're going to win at the business summit in 2026. And in order to be the best, we've got to have the best. We have to have the cleanest ballpark. We have to have the best food because on game days we're the biggest restaurant in Hartford. We have to have the best guest services and game day staff, which we feel like we do. And then to get the best sponsors, we've got to work with the best platforms available. And this is what is a year 7, or I think we're going into year 7 maybe of working with Sportsdigita.
Yeah.
We're on our 3rd DIGIDECK, and it just makes things so much easier. So, and we've gotten, I think David had mentioned it too, we've gotten so much good feedback from our current partners and prospective partners on just the ease of how they're able to go through everything and see everything, and they wonder, hey, what's that platform? So that's what helps us to be the best, is to be able to work with the best and have the best. My fellow sponsorship team, I feel like we're the best in minor league baseball too. So that's the top of our mind, is how are we going to continue to be the best? So,
Love hearing that. I guess I'm buying drinks next time is what I do
yep.
for that. So. DL, how about you?
Well, I'm not holding my breath that will happen, Doug, but yes, no, and again, not to just piggyback on everything that Steve said, but that's a good point of difference, as he was talking about, and as you were asking, is how do you stand out in a crowded marketplace? And for us, in our area, we've got universities and Power 5 schools that are commanding lots of dollars and certainly lots of impressions. We've got professional hockey, we've got NHL hockey, we've got lots of things that are vying for people's disposable income, both from a fan perspective, and then obviously, from a sponsor perspective. And so, we had a unique opportunity, not totally unique, but unique to us, and that was we were able to, kind of say, hey, brand new ballpark, brand new assets, brand new kind of philosophy in some regards, and we were able to, but we had to show them. We had to not just say it. We had to visually and interactively show that to folks. And so, using DigiDeck and the platform has certainly not only allowed us to just show a static picture, but to show it and then also understand what are they focused on? What are the pieces that they're gravitating to? What are the analytics? What are some of the data showing? And so that has really helped us, separate from others. And again, like Steve mentioned, is we've as we get out and we start sharing this, and people are excited because it's something new and they're getting to see it in a great platform that we can share. We're having those folks say, man, this is one of the best presentations we've seen. This looks great, and this is, what is this? We've had folks in all kinds of other businesses. What kind of platform is that? And so, and when you hear that, you at least know you've certainly gotten their attention, but you're also using that as a tool, because you're now standing out. You're not just coming up with kind of an old school approach to asking someone potentially eventually to spend some dollars with you. You're showing it in a format that is interactive, and it's live, and it really can kind of hit a lot of those kind of hot spots that they may have, of hey, what does this do, and what is this going to look like? It's just like I said, it does stand out, and when we get the feedback in real time, it's like anyone else. What's the market telling you as you're out in talking to folks, and the market's telling us, hey, what you're presenting and how you're presenting it is very impressive. Let's further these conversations.
Love it. I always, and we alluded to this earlier today, and my mentor told me this years ago, and I've always taken this to heart. And you said it, David. It's not always about the wins and losses. It's about the memories and the impact that sports makes, right? And I could tell you with both you and your teams are great examples of how to sell against the competition. Like it's tough, but I could 100% say y'all are killing it, which is so great to hear. I love hearing that. I know now Amanda's going to read off some questions from the group that she's received.
Yeah, I will get started. A couple really great ones that I think are timely as we are moving into a new year. So first, and would love to hear from all three of you. So whoever wants to jump in, how are you going about building sponsorship packages that produce real trackable results that a business can then take to their organization? How are you promoting the results that you can show as an organization as you build these sponsorship packages?
David, you want to start first?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I think, from the first point of building these packages, based on that portion of the question is, as we build these packages, we certainly, as listening to the client, we try to focus on, okay, is branding important to you? Okay, if branding's important to you, let's look at some permanent signage potential. Let's also look at some digital signage potential that we have in our new ballpark, because you can have your brand that's there, that's static, but then you can also have your digital where, within 24 hours or so, if a message needs to change or you want to kind of freshen it, you've got that flexibility. So building that. But when it comes to more of the, hey, what kind of trackable pieces can I kind of, go back and look to see, as part of whether it was successful to our organization or not. Again, I think it's taking that creativity where, hey, look, we're not on national TV. We're not on regional TV. We don't have Arbitron, numbers and things that can be trackable in those areas. But certainly there's areas in social media and other places that can. But I think when you're being creative, you're going and saying, okay, if we have, instead of doing a promotion that is just geared at at our ballpark, what kind of traffic driver, what are the real results that you can see? So if we put together a friends and family package of tickets, you get your tickets, but have to, you have a bounce back to, let's call it a QSR or something, similar. Well, it's not just bouncing back to go get the meal. It's bouncing back. There's a unique, in this case, Warbirds inaugural ball cap that is not for sale anywhere. It's not available anywhere, but you have to go back to that QSR to actually redeem that. And while that may be a little bit of kind of the old school, in some ways, it is taking, what's available to us and showing traffic. And we know we can sell these packages. We're going to promote these packages, but we also know that it's got a component that drives it back to this QSR in a very specific manner. And that's something that people can kind of get those data points and that trackability and be able to say, hey, you know what? We've sold them, we've got the redemption, and it's a unique item that the only place you can get it is you have to come back to our location. And so that's just it's not, hey, we didn't invent that. We didn't that we've borrowed and stolen, of course, ideas, because that's part of it. But it's just taking that when they're looking for that traffic driving tangible data component that we may not have, like like a team, that's going to have all the TV numbers and all the, all the visibility that you can kind of pull from. What do you do? And it's that creativity that I think is really driving that.
And I think too that you're seeing more and more evaluation platforms on that one. Back in the day, it was really, was it Arbitron or Nielsen and Scarborough? That was basically it. Now there's so many of them that you're able to then show your CFO these numbers and what that CFO needed to see as well at
Yep.
the end of the day. So, I think that's why they're built for that. Amanda, any more questions?
Yeah, another good one. How are you trying to get new sponsors as budgets are shrinking or there's a lot of shift and movement towards digital? How are you still promoting yourselves and getting out there to find new sponsors?
Steve, why don't you start us off on that one?
Yeah, I'd say that there's a couple different routes that we go here. So a lot of our sponsors, to be honest, are greater Hartford employers, right? Or regional employers. And they're not here because they want to sell their product. They're here because they're very proud of their greater Hartford roots, and they want to be where their clients are, where the community is, where their employees are. And they want to promote, good quality of life in greater Hartford. And we're one of the ways that they can do that. But then you've also got partners that they want to be here because there's 400,000 people a year each year, and they want to drive our fans to think of them, to be front of mind for them for their next needs. So it's really about figuring out why someone is interested in sponsorship, what they're really trying to get out of it, and working within their comfort level for budget, and then be able to work with the assets that we have to make it a win-win for everybody. We're going into year 9, as I mentioned before. Obviously, we'd love to have agreements that are 9 years long, moving forward from 2026 to 2035. Whether that's a few 2 or 3 year terms at a time, or if it's one big 5 or 10-year agreement. But we want to make sure our partners are happy from the start, and that it's a win-win from the start, so that it's we can keep that relationship growing year over year and keep them coming back year over year.
Yeah, I think
Sure.
I have
Yeah.
a good follow-up to that question, Steve, of just when it comes to renewing or recapping your sponsorship partner, what do you do that really helps you show them the value that you delivered? What are some key things that you point out in that renewal process?
It's talking about how the year went for them, right, as a company, or an organization, and how it went for us, and how we how it went together with their partnership here, showing showing proof of activations, talking about our attendance and what was new this year, what's new for 2026. And then it's talking about what's new for them for 2026. Is it the same old that works for them? You want to keep it going, or have things changed and we need to reevaluate assets and budget? I've had a few conversations with partners that they're growing from 3 or 4 locations to 9 or 10 locations, so they need to grow their branding and presence as well. And we've been able to talk about ways that we can do that here. So that's as David mentioned before, it's all about touch points throughout the year. So we do a number of parties. We actually have one tonight for our sponsors. So we do a number of parties and events at the ballpark, and then we have conversations, whether they're here at the stadium for a game, for their employee or client event, or it's just a call or an email during the workday, just to make sure that that we're continuing to create the right fit for them.
I think
No, and
that's something
I
that,
was.
oh, go ahead,
So,
David.
no, sorry, Doug. No. I was just going to say, Steve mentioned something that just, I thought made sense, great sense. But when you look at when you look at, the original question or the first question about the budgets, and yes, everyone's budget is tightening. It certainly seems, I think, and he mentioned it about, the organizations, when you can get to those key decision makers and you're asking those questions, you're understanding, okay, this is, at least in minor league baseball, this isn't a one location, conversation. If our fans are coming from, 30 or 40 miles away, even like I said, using our DigiDeck as part of it, what number of your locations are impacted within that 30 miles or 40 miles? And so it's maybe not just one budget that you're trying to pull from a single location. You're impacting maybe 13 or 14 locations, depending on the type of business. And so now you're able to pull those different pieces and maybe combine budgets to get to one kind of overarching piece. And then what Steve mentioned also, made me think, is when you're talking to these decision makers and you're putting a plan together from a sponsorship standpoint, what parts within their organization, what buckets of money do they have? Is there an HR bucket for employee entertainment and activation? Is there a marketing budget? So it's not just kind of pulling from one, it's combining. And when you combine those and you pull those pieces together, where maybe one had a smaller budget, if you're able to solve some of the needs when you're talking to these decision makers, by pulling some of their own buckets internally, sometimes you can even surpass what maybe some of those budget constraints or thoughts were, going in.
100%. I think, Amanda, correct me if I'm wrong, do we have time for one more?
Yep, we're gonna end with one
All right.
final one. There was a lot of interest in just hearing from you all how you're approaching planning for 2026 and, maybe a top priority that you have heading into the new year.
Steve, you want to start us off?
Yeah, so we're in the process now of making sure those that are up for renewal after the 2025 season, that we're having the conversations, right? That we've reached out to them, and we're in a good point of, yes, they like their current asset list. They want to continue that on a new term, or hey, they're making some adjustments, so this piece is now available, and then being able to promote that open inventory to new partners or even existing partners that are looking for other options. Because as we all know, once we get back from the new year, we're at, I think it's under 100 days because we open up on April 2nd. So we're in the process of getting as much done now as we can so that we're set up for a great 2026. So that's what we're focused on now is to get as much done, especially now we've got just a few weeks left of 2025. So there's some remaining budget amounts left from some of these companies in 2025 that they want to use before it goes away January 1. And then a lot of partners have approved budgets for 2026 that they're starting to figure out how they're going to spend that. So we want to have those conversations now. So, but again, going into year 9, we're thrilled, and we'll be doing some tarp pulls soon. I'm sure we were talking about that before. So,
DL, wrapping it up. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, Steve again, he hit it. I think what part of it is that kind of going into, call it, end of the 25 season, even into the first part of the off season, is making sure that we understand, if we've got relationships, we should understand, but confirming if they're new relationships, understanding what is their budget process, what is their time frame, when do we need to be having these conversations get to a point so we've kind of mapped out that almost what is their fiscal year? Some are calendar, some are different, obviously, but understanding when do we need to start having those conversations early enough so that we're in the budget planning process with as many of these organizations as possible going into it, versus sometimes, okay, now you got to find some budget, and certainly that's you can't always get ahead of every bit of it, but doing that as much as we can on the front side of understanding what their planning cycles are for each of these organizations that we're talking to, and making sure we get out in front of it as much as possible, so we can be in that conversation as opposed to having to be reactive.
For sure. First of all, I'm looking at the time now. We could go another 2-3 hours. I mean, easy, right? I mean, I'm just saying. But wanted to thank both you, Steve and David. Like, obviously, you and I, we all have known each other for years on this one, but it's great that you're kind of selling really different products at the end of the day, and but you have some of the positive ways that you're doing things that are so alike, which is good. And I always just say you're doing it the right way, and you're seeing it. And that's what's so cool to do, right? Good things do happen to good people. I'm a firm believer in that. But thank you both for being on. Everyone, thank you. It's not the holiday season yet, right? On this one, just know for everybody on this call, right? You still have $25 to chase. As I know, and David knows, and Steve knows, a lot of businesses, right? It's a use it or lose it. So make sure that you are calling them, because if they don't use it, it's gone for the next year on this one. So good conversations to have on this one. But again, thank you both. I really enjoyed it. For everybody on the call, we will send out the recordings so you can listen and pass along to your teams. So thank you again. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.